That another big topic this year is the sick leave and family leave. I mean, there are a lot of COVID credits, but that were typically only available for companies or employees of companies before. This year, I know that that's changed because you've told me that. So can you tell us a little bit more about sick leave, family leave, and how that affects us?
Yes. So with the credit for sick leave and family leave originally started with the CARES Act in March of 2020. And it was originally for business owners who had employees who were out of work because they had COVID, or they were caring for someone with COVID, or they were caring for a child because their school was closed due to COVID. And it was only available to employers to get a credit against employees who were out and those employers continued to pay wages. In December of 2020, the end of December of 2020, new legislation was passed stating that the credit for sick leave and family leave is now available to self-employed individuals. So what does that mean? It means that both of these two must be true in order to qualify for the credit. You have to carry on a business as a self-employed individual. So a self-employed individual means you are either a Schedule C, again, sole proprietor, independent contractor that files Schedule C, or a partner in a partnership. If you are an owner of an S Corp and you are an employee of the S Corp, you're eligible for the credits in the traditional as an employee of your company. So this is for your Schedule C and partners in a partnership. And you would have been eligible to receive qualified sick leave wages if you're an employee, or eligible for family leave if you were an employee. And that simply means that you either had COVID, or, as I mentioned, cared for someone with COVID, or cared for a child that school was closed because of COVID. So how much is the credit? The maximum credit for sick leave is $5,110, and the maximum credit for family leave is up to $10,000. So we're talking about real dollars here. This isn't, a $500 or $100 credit. There is a significant amount of eligibility here, and it is based on the number of days that you are unable to work due to your particular circumstance. So I'll just give you for example. If you are unable to work for 10 days because your child has, or because you have COVID, you would take 10 days times the maximum rate. And it's $511 per day. And we have a lot of the backup information that we'll send to you. I didn't want to put it all on a slide because it was voluminous and we didn't want to kill you with content. So I do see a message come into the chat. Does this apply to gig workers or just registered businesses? From my understanding, gig workers file a Schedule C when they file their tax return. And if you file a Schedule C, then you are eligible. So if you receive 1099s from your various clients, various vendors as a gig worker, and you're reporting those 1099s on a Schedule C, you are eligible for this credit. It is a separate form. It's form 7220. I'll confirm that, but and it's filed with your individual tax return.
Andrea, I have a question too. I mean, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but would you think that this would also hold true for this year as well, for 2021, since we're still in COVID? Or
so they've extended the credit until March 31st of 2021. So with your 2020 taxes, you will, if you were out during 2020, you would file the form in 2020 for the days that you were out. If you have COVID or caring for someone with COVID, or school is closed, in 2021 up through March 31st, you'd file this form with your 2021 taxes. So we do know that the number of days, and this credit is eligible up to March 31st, 2021, which you'll file with your 2021 taxes. We don't know if it'll be extended past March 31st.
Okay. Okay. And I know, just like the home office deduction, you had mentioned about eligibility. Certain folks are eligible, certain are not. And I don't know if you've touched on all of this yet, but maybe you can expand on that about the eligibility.
Sure. So this, I know this has a lot of info on it, and I don't want to get, this is the eligibility per the legislation that was passed. So it's a bit dense in content, but what this basically states in simple terms is if you had COVID, or if you were quarantined, or if you were advised by a healthcare provider to quarantine because you could have been exposed, or you were experiencing symptoms of COVID, or caring for an individual who was in isolation or quarantine due to COVID, caring for a child whose school or place of care was closed due to COVID precautions, or is experiencing any other substantially similar conditions specified by the Secretary of Health and Human Services. And it leaves it vague there in the end. But I think we all know, if we were home and unable to work, and it also means unable to telework. So, it's, if you were continuously able to work, you just had to work from home, you're not eligible. But if you had to stop working and unable to earn an income, then you're eligible for the credit. We have not heard, we have not received any guidance of how you will prove or substantiation or backup for how you will prove that you had COVID. As a tax preparer, we are simply taking the words of our client if they tell us that they were in this particular predicament, and give us the number of days that they were out. So we are relying on all of you, in a sense, right? Our clients, to say, yes, we did, or we were preparing for COVID. And so, there's, I don't know if you're ever audited, how this will come out, or what type of proof that they will request. Of course, this is new to everybody, so nobody's claimed the credit yet, and nobody's been audited for it. But I would just say, document, the days that you were out. Make sure, as always, make sure that you're documenting, if you went to the doctor, if you have a test, if you have a positive test, or if it's on your calendar, how many days you were out, and so forth like that. The more documentation you have, the better.
Andrea, a question came in.
Sure.
It says, does this apply to sole proprietors that are incorporated?
So if you are incorporated and filing a corporate tax return, then you are likely an employee of your company, because as an owner of a corporation, you're also an employee, and you're paid on wages. So you would get the credit in the traditional sense through your payroll company. This is not filed on your individual tax return. So through your payroll company, you can get the credit if you were out during those days and continued to pay yourself, you continue to be on wages, then you would be eligible to receive the credit through your payroll.
Okay. So this is pretty significant, because a benefit like this had never been really available to the self-employed or gig workers before. Correct. So
that's correct. And it's brand new. And since it was just passed in December, there are many people who don't know that it is available to them. And many, so it's important, and we'll talk about it a little later in the gathering your documentation, to provide your accountant or your tax preparer with the information of knowing, how many days you were out, or who you cared for, and when the child's, if you were caring for a child, when the school was closed, and to have those dates available and the timing so that the credit is easily calculated. Because for the sick credit, it's up to a maximum of 10 days, but for the family leave portion of the credit, it's up to a maximum of 50 days. So,
Wow.
if you were out, if you were sick for 2 weeks, then you're going to hit your maximum of 10 days. But for the family leave, it's up to 50 days. So you want to make sure that that you really haven't know when you're getting your return prepared, how many days you were out.
So question for you, Aunt, do they need to be 50 consecutive days, or can they be broken up? If
They don't have to be consecutive, but it is a maximum of 50. So let's say, for an example, if school was closed for 30 days in April, or between March and April, and then, then again in July because of an outbreak or something, then you can add those two together, but
Okay.
still the maximum is 50.